Hello, everyone. This is Tammy Fisher within the Doll World, and I'm here today with my lovely, lovely co-host, Miss Georgette Taylor.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, lovely Miss Georgette Taylor. And today's guest is Andrew Yang, who's also going by Astor Yang, and he is the playboy of our doll world. Hello, Astor. I'm going to call you Astor. I'm trying to call you Astor.
Call me Astor. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Georgette.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Excited. We're so excited.
Yeah, we are excited. We're going to try not to fangirl too much with you.
Okay. You've had a lot of amazing people on the show, so I'm not surprised. You must be fangirling a lot.
We do, but it's always good to have new people to fangirl over.
Exactly.
Like yourself, Mr. Doll Extraordinaire. So we're excited.
Exactly. Yeah, we interviewed someone recently, and I said I'm fangirling over everybody because I'm excited to meet everybody. Just it's like, oh, I want to know your story. So that's where we're about to go. We're going to ask you. I'll ask you. So please tell us your doll journey, where it began, and how you ended up here today with us on In the Doll World.
Okay, it's a long story.
We got time for you.
Well, my mom was always collected Madame Alexander dolls growing up, and she loved dolls. She took little porcelain doll making classes when I was a kid, and dolls were always something that were kind of in the house. And but I wasn't really, I was still a young boy growing up in Utah, and I was raised Mormon, and I don't think she felt too good about giving me dolls when I was a kid. But when I was like, sixth grade, going into junior high, she bought me a collector Colors of the Wind Pocahontas, Barbie doll. Not Barbie doll, but it was made by Mattel. And then an issue of Barbie Bazaar, and that kind of got me into collecting and just knowing that there was a doll world. So I started collecting silk stones when I was in high school. Then I came to find out on kind of in a funny way that Robert Best, the designer of the silk stones, went to my high school. So yeah, when I was very small world. But I ended up going to FIT in New York for fashion design and doing women's wear design. And while I was in school, all of my fashion illustrations, I'd always get critiques from the teachers that I spent too much time drawing the faces and drawing the hair. But I ended up working in fashion for about 5 years as like an assistant designer. But it wasn't really very satisfying. It was just kind of, I thought it would be a way that I could be an artist and kind of like make a living. And I was living in New York, and it seemed like being a fashion designer just seemed like the thing. And but I was just really unhappy. We would spend weeks at a time debating the hemline of a skirt, or like it would just be recycled every season. There wasn't a lot of like creative stuff there, even though I was at, kind of a super, like a high-end company. And 2008 came around, and they started laying off all these people in the company. And I made a fabric doll for fun, like basically kind of from high school to through college, through this design. I kind of stopped collecting because I was, broke, young in New York, and no room for dolls in my tiny apartments. And I had kind of an idea of like, I just kind of wanted to make a doll for a while. And but I was not a sculptor, so I felt, and the dolls that I loved, they were fashion dolls. And I didn't feel like I could approach doing it until, I don't know, something switched, and I just said, I do know how to sew, so why don't I make a fabric doll? And just the act of making it, and I talked about it for like a year. I want to make a doll just for myself, for fun, and with the people I worked with. And then I just made one, and she kind of came to life. It was like my signature. It was kind of just about 25 inches high fabric, and I drew the face on, and I had a little mohair because I worked at the design studio. I worked at a fur place, so there was mohair, and I made a little wig. And I was just enchanted with her, and everybody else was enchanted. They were all just impressed that, oh wow, you actually just did it. You did it. And but she was just kind of like one of many little kind of creative things. I was drawing, I was doing lots of stuff, and but I was feeling overall like I wanted to just do something more than this fashion thing. And so they started laying off all these people in my company, but they were all getting unemployment. I was like, oh, that seems kind of nice. So I had been there for a few years up until that point, and I said, you know what, maybe it's time for me to go too. And but they helped me out, and I basically kind of used the time to kind of go freelance and try to figure out my life. I was selling t-shirts that I designed at a market, and I was kind of all over the place. I was called like an anything kid in New York. There was lots of those, and I was probably like 23 or 24 at the time. And so of course, very bold to make that kind of move during the first reception, but but then it was kind of this very happenstance. I went out to a bar and I started talking to this guy outside of the bar, and he said, so what do you do? And I said, oh, I write and I draw, and I make dolls. And he said, you make dolls? That's weird. I want to talk about that. And he turns out he was kind of ran this blog, and it was like kind of a queer arts and culture downtown New York blog, but it had kind of a big readership. And it was called East Village Boys. And once I saw that he kind of wanted to interview me about kind of my journey as an artist, and I made a handful of dolls just up until that point, and they were all just kind of sitting in my room. And I said, well, this guy wants to interview me, I better kind of like put a brand together. So I called them the Kuklitas, and
Call them
they
what?
were
What did you call them?
the Kuklitas, Kouklitas, like a play on the Greek word for all kukla.
Okay.
So Kuklita, and they had a very Tim Burton vibe. I made little stories for all of them. They were all kind of like gothic, and I ended up doing like a little photo shoot with them for this blog, and then it ended up being like a really big, like popular article for them. And this all goes to show you, like, be nice to everyone you meet. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, I love those dolls. Do you want to dress them up in like designer clothes and put them in this magazine? And it was someone that I had gone to college with, and I got him a job at Zara when I worked at Zara. He's now the editor. He was the editor of some fashion magazine now. And he said, hey, like, do you want to, do these dolls and make mini dolls in my style of, not mini, but my style of dolls in designer clothes like Lanvin or Marc Jacobs or Comme des Garçons and the current runway looks, and do like a little editorial spread for this little fashion magazine. This little magazine is called The Block. It was a Canadian magazine. And from that first blog article, I met my friend Josh. He's the creator of Pigeon Doll. He reached out to me too. He said, hey, I want to start making dolls. Like, let's start doing this. So it's kind of like I started to kind of build this little doll community. But I ended up doing this little magazine spread, and then before the magazine even came out, when just the pictures were available, I had the pictures. I was working on the dolls for the magazine spread. So I was sewing the little Lanvin dolls, and I would just run around New York working on the dolls all the time, because I was like, I had no studio. My apartment was really tiny. So I would be stuffing doll parts on the subway train, or, this same queer arts blog, they wanted me to model for like a shoot, because I was really skinny and cute at the time. And they had this fashion photographer. His name was Terry Siolis, and I went in to do kind of the audition for the modeling thing, and I was working on one of the dolls, and he said, "Hey, what's that? That looks cool." I didn't get the modeling job, but he said, "That's that what are you working on? That's really great." And I said, "Oh, I'm just making these dolls. It's for a magazine. She's wearing Lanvin." And he said, "Hey, do you mind if I take pictures of that and send it to my friend at Vogue?" And I thought, yeah, sure. Everybody talks. They're all gonna. In New York, like, everyone knows someone at Vogue or something.
But Vogue, right? Everybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. Or like, yeah, I'll hear from you. Whatever. Like, But then he ended up doing it, and I got contacted by this editor at Vogue the next day, and she said, "Hey, can you bring these dolls in?" And this photo spread hadn't even come out yet, but by the time I went to the Vogue office, I had some pictures, but the magazine wasn't even released. And I met with this editor at Vogue. Her name was Elisa Santisi. She's like a accessories editor. And I go to the Vogue office. I looked really fashion, and all of a sudden I was meeting all these cool fashion writers like Hamish Bowles and all these Candy Press Price, all these little editors that I had looked up to for years. And this editor said, you know, I would love to do like a spread for Vogue. I would love to do some pictures and stuff, but you know, I have to get Anna Wintour's approval. And I said, okay, great. She's like, I guess I could show her these pictures. And I would say, you know, because the dolls are really tactile. You know, this is just like this is like a later fabric version, but you know, they're really big and you kind of have to hold them. And I said, you know, it would make a big difference if she just like saw the dolls. And the editor, she goes, well, I don't know if I can like leave them here overnight or if I can get a meeting, but let me see if she's available right now. So she picks up the phone, she dials this thing, then she hangs up the phone. Then she gets a ring back and it says, Anna, we'll see you now. And she takes this big armful of like 9 of my dolls and she carries them back to an office. And then she comes back out and she has this kind of stunned look on her face. She says, Anna wants to know if you can make 200 for Fashions Night Out. And Fashions Night Out was this big kind of fashion week event. And I didn't even know what that meant. There was a Fashions Night Out in like a couple weeks. I'm like, I don't think I can make 200 in a couple weeks, but she meant the one next season. And I said, I just had learned to just say yes to things. So I just said, yeah, sure, I could do that. And she said, okay, great. Well, you know, they want to talk about like if you're going to sell them at Barney's or Bergdorf's. And I was like, oh, okay. It was like a lot of fun. And but I ended up connecting with them, and then they put me in touch with Barney's, and Barney said, I guess Anna wants it. So, and I was, because I loved Barney's, and for me, my aesthetic at the time fit a lot more with Barney's. It was Simon Doonan was the window director, and Julie Gilhart, and little did I know it was kind of the last bit, because they changed, the Barney's ended up getting bought, and so it was kind of the last era of this like kind of iconic fashion time with them, and it was really special for that reason. But you know, in this time before I met with Barney's, then the magazine came out in Canada, and I was contacted by a store in Hong Kong, and they said, hey, do you want to make like 10 for our window in Hong Kong? And it was a very fancy store. It's called Joyce Boutique. So then I went to but they kind of said something about like wanting an exclusive, and I was really young, and I just thought I believed everything I heard, and so I went to these Barney's meetings. I went to this first Barney's meeting, and I said, yeah, you know, but I'm also like, I got contacted by this store in Hong Kong, and I don't know, they kind of want an exclusive. And then they said, oh, well, then maybe we want more dolls. And then I talked to the store in Hong Kong, and I said, oh, no, Barney's wants to like order a bunch and da-da-da. And then the store in Hong Kong said, well, now we want 150, and we want to fly you to Hong Kong, and we'll do a whole event for you. And it's our 40th anniversary, so you could do dolls for our windows and all of our stores. So I basically overnight went from kind of like unemployed, hustling New York, to all of a sudden I was getting these $30,000-$40,000 wholesale orders. And, you know, and the doll business was kind of happening on the side. I you know, before the magazine hit, before all that stuff happened, I did try to take my dolls to doll shows, just in the area, but like some collectors really got it, and then some just kind of didn't know, and I didn't know what to charge for them. And it was kind of taking the dolls out of the context of that doll space and then putting them in a retail space where they were like a luxury doll, like kind of like a luxury skirt or something that they kind of took off. And so I did these first 2 windows, and then you know, from the bar, like someone from Paris came into Barney's in New York when they were in display, and you know, said, do you want to do the windows for Gallery Lafayette next year in Paris? It's like the first American artist. And it was, you know, so one job just kind of snowballed to the next, to the next, to the next. And I ended up kind of doing a business where I was traveling around the world doing display and exhibit with the dolls, and retail, especially like collaborations, always merch, for like 8 years, you know. Yeah. Wow. And then, you know, I always kept my toe in a bunch of different projects. I had my most expensive dolls I had in this gallery in London. It was called SHOWstudio Gallery. This fashion photographer called Nick Knight runs that studio. Also fun stuff like Beyoncé stylist grabbed one of the dolls from Barney's, and she has it in a concert video where she like has the same makeup as the doll. And it was the same year, the gallery I had these dolls in, I was doing the windows in Paris at the time, and I had these very expensive dolls in this gallery. I didn't think any of them would sell. Then I found out there was this kind of one woman who bought a lot of the dolls off the floor of Barney's. She bought like 30 at once, and they were retailing for like $1,500, $2,000 each.
What?
And then she kind of she bought all the dolls from this gallery, and those were like 3,000 or 4,000 each, or 8,000 each. And she's bought them all. And I was like, who is this lady? And I ended up connecting with her, and she's this businesswoman named Christina Carlino, and she's the founder of Philosophy Cosmetics, and it was like a QVC cosmetics fortune. And she contacted me and wanted to kind of like have me work on a doll brand for her, for a concept that she was working on. And for me, that symbolized security, because even though I was living this high life, I was 24, 25, 26 years old, handling these crazy orders, paying people, flying around the world, like kind of running a business, and not with no guidance. And and I was always like, at one point my overhead was like $10,000 a month, and I didn't even know how I did that.
You look back at it now and you're like, what happened? How can
I know, and I just
that?
figured it out. And I think part of it was being young, and part of it was being naive, and part of it was just being in the moment. Fashion is very like that. And I always kind of knew that moment was going to be like fashion. If you get involved with fashion, it's like a double-edged sword, because there's going to be a moment where you're kind of out. There's going to be a moment where everyone's seen it, everyone's done it. And, I would have conversations with Bergdorf's or other retailers, and they'd be like, well, Barney's already did it, so we're going to have to pass, we're going to cancel. But usually it was kind of like I was doing these windows, and one window just kind of led to the next and led to the next. And I did after I did the Paris windows, I did a big project with Lancôme in Paris. And then, I started working with this woman, Christina Carlino, and she kind of bought my company. And, I was going to do this big social media job with this eyewear company called Linda Farrow, and I couldn't do it. And so I kind of, I told you I was sharing, at that time in New York, I was also sharing a studio with my friend Josh. And he's the creator of Pigeon. And I said, I can't really do this job, and can you take this job on? And then he did. And like, he went forward with Pigeon, and it blew up that way. And I kind of took a step back from those projects, and I was working with this woman, but it was good. I mean, so she kind of bought my company. I like had a contract with her where I was creative director of like, where I basically kind of licensed out the look of my dolls for her concept. It was based around archetypes. So she kind of saw the dolls as this vision of, instead of how Barbie kind of has like, they have their careers, but instead of like, she saw like, I could have a doll that was an athlete or an artist or a spiritual. And she really wanted to bring this idea to like the masses. And she was working with lots of different companies, like fragrance companies and denim companies. And she just happened to like buy and love my dolls and wanted to help me do that. And in the process, there were people there at this company I worked with, and they all had come from like the entertainment space. And they said, we really have to do to make this a brand is turn it into like an entertainment property. So those 3 years were basically a crash course in, I was going to kids trade shows. I started to go to Toy Fair. I started to build story around the dolls in a much bigger way. And even though for reasons totally unrelated, it didn't end up working out. Like I didn't end up launching this brand with them, but we were in talks to sell it to DreamWorks. So I started flying out to LA a lot. And even though it didn't work out, over this time, I started thinking about a million other dolls that I wanted to make. And also because I wasn't under as much pressure to make and create and have my own business, I got deep into collecting at that point. I had an expendable income. So I was like getting those eBay packages every day. I kind of like rediscovered the joy of collecting, I started to buy up all like the Barbies from my childhood in mitten box. I'd have one in the box, I'd have one out. I started to get into BJDs. It kind of was like a different level of development, I guess, even though I was still working. I wasn't really doing my fabric dolls the same way. I was still dolls were still happening. And So I mean, after this ended, I said, you know what? I have like other ideas for other kind of doll properties. You know, I had a really cool like mermaids concept that I wanted to, like, I felt like no one's made the right mermaid dolls. So I was like, you know, after I left this company, like clockwork, I got a couple of window jobs. I got a really amazing window job in Japan. And then I was getting ready to, and then I decided I wanted to try to move to LA. I found love. I had a boyfriend, and we said, oh, let's move to LA. And I got a very crazy job in Hong Kong that I didn't even want to take on because it was happening during the move, and they wanted basically the same level of work that I did for this Paris window, which was a huge window. It was 200 dolls, all these windows, they were all automated. And that project was a year. It took about a year to do that project. But they wanted that same level and scale and done in 3 months. And I was just kind of like, I think this is gonna have to be me saying no. And I'm moving to LA and I don't have a studio and I don't, you know. So I ended up, but then I got advice that I'm really glad I took from a friend. And they said, well, just give them like the craziest fee price. And if they say yes, you'll figure it out. And so I costed out this budget and I was like, I'm flying first class to India. I'm going to produce the whole collection in with my friend's factory in New Delhi. Then I'm going to fly here. Then I'm going to do this. And I kind of just created this fantasy project. And I was like, you have to photograph every single one of the dolls. Like, and then they said yes. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to do it. And I had this kind of feeling. I said, you know what, this is all too good to be true. And I was feeling like this is going to be kind of the last of these like big projects. And plus, like that level of work, I was kind of I needed a little. I wasn't burnt out, but I was getting there, you know. So I did this amazing job in Hong Kong and then moved back to LA and then was trying to break into the mass toy market with some of these skills that I had, these contacts I had made over the last few years. And at the same time, I had already started working conversations with Tonner. At the time, we were working on the Mary Astor doll. You know, so it was kind of like different kinds of dolls everywhere. And but LA was tough. LA's a tough town. You know, I thought New York was tough, but LA's a different kind of tough. And so I would get these great meetings with all these people, and we're just kind of getting the run around. And that kind of went on for a long time, and it went on until I ran out of money. And then I said, you know what I have to get back in the studio. I have to make my fabric dolls. They're always going to be the ones. And literally I rented my studio, and it was kind of a big expense, but I needed the separation of the space. And then very randomly, this girl who was an assistant on a job that I had done in China, like a charity job I had done in China years before, said, hey, my new boss is in town. Do you do you want, I think she works with American artists and brings them to China. Would you want to meet up with her? And I got my studio ready, and she came in, and she understood where like my brand was, and kind of my classic fabric, Andrew Yang, I called it AY doll at that point, with the kuklita evolved, you know. She said, I want to bring you to China, and let's make you like a brand in China, and let's make this like a lifestyle brand. Let's bring this into apparel. Let's bring this into whatever. And she works with American artists and designers and creatives and does that and brings them over to China. And I trusted her, and we had a really, really amazing relationship. And for the last few years, you know, as I was kind of working on, like, Tonner came out and Kadira came out. And you know, that's a long process and story in and of its own. But the China, I was doing a lot of this work in China, and it was kind of like mini versions of the projects I'd done in the past. So I would like collaborate with jewelry companies, or I would do windows or department store installations, but they were all really much more manageable. And of course, I'm a little more seasoned now. And I did a really great installation at this store in Bangkok, and that was in November of 2020. So as soon as I came back, it was kind of the world started to shut down, and I put a lot of my focus in the doll business into Asia. So all of a sudden it just kind of evaporated. And I had kind of, went through what a lot of people went through. I had kind of an existential thing, Kadira, and I had done these other projects with Sideshow and, collectibles, and they didn't end badly, but they had ended. And I was kind of like, and I had put so much focus on building this doll brand in China, I had kind of neglected all of the American market and like having a customer base here and building a brand here. And I'm also I'm really social media averse, which is how any doll maker can tell you they make and sell dolls, or any brand, does anything. And I'm lucky or unlucky enough to have my career took off before social media did. So I never really had to rely on it. But that meant I also like have never really mastered using it as a tool to like flourish a business. It's always been on the side, and I've always done freelance work or projects. So I had kind of the same like existential crisis a lot of people went through when we had COVID. Like, what am I doing and what's going on? And I started working a lot. I moved to a smaller studio. I started sharing a studio with my friend Brian. He's a famous drag queen named Katya Zamolodchikova. We've been friends in LA for a while. And, when COVID happened, I said, hey, I got to downsize my studio. Would you want to like share a studio? And we rented a little studio apartment and we shared it. And eventually I kind of turned into me making a lot of dresses for her and getting back into like my original fashion background, but also like him as an artist. Like Katya is as a drag queen, like is a doll. That's like a life-size doll. We treat her like there's a personality, there's a look, and there's whatever. So like all my skills as like a doll designer still like came to a good place with her. And so it turned into me like we collaborated on like I helped her do like creative direction for a couple music videos, and basically it was kind of like we chose to kind of be in lockdown together and like collaborate together because no one else could make a lot of work, and he was getting the work, so I was glad to like have a little bit of a side income. But and all that is to say, I kind of was like realizing that like I had never really taken, the way the career happened, it happened so fast. I had never really, I've always, I know this is so crazy to say, but like I think a lot of artists' biggest fear is like worried they're not going to reach their full potential. I mean, that's anybody can have that fear, but with my work, like I've always like been swept up in these big projects, or I've had these great opportunities. And so I cut corners. I see like I hire people, how many dolls can I make in 10 days? How many dolls can whatever? And someone who bought my original Kuklitas before any of the dolls took off, her name is Beth Lozier. She's like an amazing collector. She collects a lot of Paul Fam's work. She's an amazing person. But she bought a lot of my early work, and she knew that I was going to be a success. So she was a doll collector, that's Sixth Sense. And she said, you know what, Andrew, just watch out. Like you can always just watch out. Don't let it run you. Don't say yes to these big projects if you can't do them. Don't say yes. But I was always kind of like in the survivalist mode. And I think some of the most successful doll makers like who devote themselves full time to it, like my friend Josh, the way he is with Pigeon, or Marina Bichkova of Enchanted Doll, she told me, she told both of us, and he took it to heart. I didn't really take it to heart, but she said, you can decide. I really decided the scale that I wanted to run my business, but they're more assertive in kind of like how far they want to take it and how not far they want to take it. And I was someone who was just a little more like swept up and said like, okay, I'll figure it out. And I realized over this time during COVID, when I was working on these other costume projects, I said, you know what, I've never really, I've always like thought about how fast I can make a doll, but like, what happens if I try to spend the longest amount of time on one doll? What does my art look like then? And so I've really been kind of over the last year and a half been like centering myself and trying to really kind of get back in touch with who I am as an artist and not an entrepreneur. And that means that I'm been kind of I'm going back to my DNA. I'm still making fabric dolls, but I'm also working on some really special dolls that are taking a lot more time, and art dolls too. And also, I think I've kind of always, because I'm also a collector, and because I also like I have so many ideas for so many different brands, and I you know, early on when I first started making the fabric dolls, I had this other artist friend, and I before they took off at all, when I just made that first one, I worked at that fashion company, I made it, and I saw where it could go. I said, oh my God, I could make these in fashion looks. I could put them in magazines. I could put them in department stores. And I said that to a friend, and I was getting really excited. And she goes to me, she said, you know what, just make them. Just make the dolls. Just keep making more. Don't think about where it's going to go. Don't think about whatever. And I'm finding myself like returning to that advice, because I think I kind of let the train off the rails for a long time. I had great opportunities to work with companies, and so I just said yes, 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 and let me make 5 different doll brands, but one is a lifetime of work.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
it's a lot. And so I'm kind of approaching, yes, I'm making different types of dolls, but
Mhm.
instead of me, I wanted to be I thought I'm gonna have my website, I'm gonna have like different brands for all the different styles of dolls I want to make, with different packaging and different concepts. And now I'm kind of just wanting to do away with all of that and just make beautiful dolls. Just make
Mhm.
beautiful dolls, and art dolls, fashion dolls, fabric dolls. Just make beautiful dolls that 100% come from me as an artist and put them out there, you know. And I've also because I've been doing this work with Katya, I was asked to like collaborate on a show with another friend of mine who's a singer, and all of my background of like production and producing these big windows, like it's been great. I'm like producing this show, and I'm also performing in it too.
Mhm.
And my character is a doll that comes to life. And I'm finding as I'm like working on these non-doll projects, these shows, focusing on having like a happy life, um, all of that is kind of like bringing me back to, because dolls are something that's going to be, I'm going to do forever. You know, even if I go back to school to be a vet, I'm going to still be making dolls, playing with dolls, doing something, you know. But they're a medium. It's like
Right.
my paint. And
Mhm.
and so, but yeah, so I'm just kind of right now I'm starting to think about, okay, let me not divide up all these doll brands, and like, you know, it doesn't have to be this. And because it's so easy to fall into that when you're trying to appeal to collectors too.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
like, oh my God, I only collect 16-inch resin fashion BJGs. And if you don't make quarter scale clothes, then I don't want to look at your stuff. Or I only collect fashion royalty, or I only do this or that. And I'm not that kind of collector. So why am I trying to be
Right.
that kind of artist for people?
Mhm.
You know, my doll shelf is all different shapes, all different sizes. And so I'm trying to now just kind of reapproach the way that I make them, because I think I got stuck, you know, in trying to do these like more specific things and trying to do it correct. And I have other friends who are having success with, like my friend Pasha
Mhm.
and Josh, you know, they have
Mhm.
success because they're able to just focus
Yeah.
on the
Mhm.
one, you know, and on the one thing. But that's just, I'm not like that. So what I'm trying to do is kind of focus on, if they're going to be different, then like they can all still be mine. They can all still be an Andrew Yang artist doll. And you
Right.
Mhm.
can come to me when if you want a BJD, or you want a fabric doll, or you want whatever. I have 20, 30 fabric dolls that are beautiful that I've been working on over the past few years. You know, I had a 16-inch BJD line I can show you. Like, so this was
Okay.
one of the dolls that I'm like worked on
Oh,
in the
that
last
is
2 years. She's
Cute.
I wanted to kind of do like a luxury American Girl doll, you know,
Mhm.
like she's 18 inches, but she's fully articulated. And also I'm really inspired by like antique dolls.
Mhm.
And even my fabric dolls kind of speak to that. They're kind of primitive.
Mhm.
Um, So
Face closer.
thank you.
Yeah.
She's
No.
she's a little spooky
my
girl.
She's cute.
No, she's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Oh.
So, but she's
Yeah.
another one. I worked with this amazing sculptor, Ada Legrand, and she brought a sketch to life.
Beautiful.
And then I made 12 of them, and she's the only one that's finished. The rest are sitting in a closet. So,
Oh.
It's that
I'm
creative
just,
mind. I'm telling you.
I know.
Exactly.
I know.
It'll
And then every
really-
once in a while, I'll post pictures, and then people who want them find them. And so I'm not like this has probably been a problem, but I'm not like obsessed with selling them in that way. Like, I realize like my joy in making them is almost akin to like a collector's joy in collecting.
Yes.
And I'm also that kind of collector. You all know what it's like when you see a doll that you want, you figure out how to get it. You figure out how to get it. And so I trust that if you're out there and people are going to see my work, respond to my work, they're going to find it and they're going to get it. I could probably do a little more to get them out there, but I just kind of had this epiphany, and I just, what? Just make beautiful dolls and take pictures of them and put them out there. And then if people want them, they'll find them. Just go back to my roots. That's literally how it all started, was I just made them out of like the pureness of my heart and wanting to do it. And just took some pictures and shared them with the world, and the world kind of happened. So yeah, so it's been a fun couple of years, but I couldn't have, like, when I was a kid and reading those Barbie Bazaar magazines, and I just I had no idea this could be a career. And even now, even though I'm doing tailoring and costumes and these shows and stuff, but even now I'm like, how have I gone this long and this is still paying the bills? Like, I don't know how to I don't know how to get it any other way, but it's been good. I mean, I've had some, I did, when I first moved to LA, I did do some mass toy projects, and before the China stuff took off. And I, when I was knocking on all the doors and taking these meetings, I thought it was something I really wanted to do. I thought that maybe I would want to get in with like a Mattel, or maybe I'd want to like work on like at a senior level in doll development and whatnot. But that kind of got a little dark really fast. Talk about, it's kind of reminded me of like what it was like to be in the fashion industry, of like cutting corners. I had some really great experiences. I ended up falling into the styling head category. I made a styling head with Spin Master toys. And it did well for them. And then I made a styling head for Breyer as like a horse, and those were fun projects. But then I'm also really kind of aware of global warming, and we're all trying to be more conscious of like what we put out there. And I said, do I really want my contribution to the world to be like plastic at this level? And I don't know, I'm very lucky that I've been able to not really have to compromise in that way. It's kind of spoiled me, even when I did a collection with Sideshow, and they're like these dolls, they're called muses of the underworld, and they're these kind of like high fashion, long fashion BJDs, but they're kind of like high fashion models from this like world of the dead they created. So it's kind of like gothic, like a ghost and a zombie, and like a very couture Monster High, but a totally different concept. But anyways, they had a whole design philosophy that was about maintaining the integrity of the product, and seeing how much quality they could get. And it's just a really different approach. Everybody has a different style. But
if you look at Sideshow, I think people who purchase from Sideshow are people who walk in the door understanding, I'm going to probably pay a little bit of money for this piece, whereas people who buy the dolls that you see in the department stores, a lot of those dolls are for children. So how much do you spend on a doll for a child? And that, and so when you look at the concept, like they started out with this doll and she had on a beautiful diamond dress. I mean, I don't know, encrusted dress. And then now it's a
a print or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little plastic dress. Then you understand they they had to make so many thousands, tens of thousands of that particular doll. So yeah, and that I would assume that would be hard, and that's one of the differences between when you go out there and this is with all things, when you go out and you become an artist as opposed to someone who makes a living in an area. And not that you can't be the two, but when you, as a writer, if you're a writer and you are doing your own gig, you become the Hunter Thompson of your genre. People are going to buy your book. I mean, you don't have to work for somebody else. And he did, he started out as a journalist and whatever, but people will buy your book. Then you have the people who they're journalists and they write for the newspaper. And and so it's like, it's riskier to become the person who is able to sell the book just by your name. But there's a freedom in that because you're not having to deal with what this company is saying you have to deal with. You don't have to have this kind of a cover or follow this format, or you just freestyle.
Yeah. And that's kind of what you like nailed it exactly. That's where I've landed now. I'm realizing, the more that I just develop as an artist and, even with these other projects, with the performing, with costumes, with this or that, it just can bring attention to the dolls in a way. So now that's my main job now, is filter how I've been thinking about dolls as a business for many years, and now just returning to them as art and just saying, you know what, I'm just a doll artist. I make art dolls. I'm going to put them online and have them for sale. And that's a very different approach than having a doll with a personality and accessories and dealing with production and manufacturing overseas. So I'm returning to my kind of one of a kind roots. And even with the doll, I have a lot of Kadira inventory, and it's beautiful, and I could make me a little coin, but like after kind of he passed the reins to me to run Kadira myself, I had this kind of juncture. I said, okay, well, I can keep trying and making collections in China, or like I'm gonna just work on making some beautiful one-offs. But the collectors want the full collection. They want the basic doll with the wigs and this, but they don't understand the gargantuan cost and investment and time and headache that goes into it. Not to mention, the world is changing. I mean, look at the supply chain issues, this and that. Like, I mean, the world is changing in a very, very big way, and people can't make dolls at that scale anymore. Artists like us kind of can't do that. We all have to kind of customize the way that we do it now. Even Tonner, the way that he's working with Sideshow now, different from how he's running his business, because the world just doesn't, it's not great
accommodating for that.
It's not accommodating for exactly for that kind of business.
Yes. You have to shift with that as well in order to make it viable for you still as an artist, right? And also viable for the people who want to collect, because the way it was done before is just not the way it can be done now. It's just doesn't happen. It's not happening that way.
No. I mean, the only reason Integrity is still making dolls is because they have their foot in those factories, and they've had it there for 20 years, and that's it. And same way Mattel, I'm sure MGA's got it, but and even you go to like the higher end level BJDs and BJD makers, they all have their caster that they've built a relationship with slowly over years, and then they can work with them, and that allows them to grow their business. And like but so they're all very, very specific channels that people have to work with to build a business at that level. And when I was lucky, because I with the fabric dolls, I had the same thing. I worked with a apparel manufacturer to make the raw doll body parts, and then I would have a studio here where I would do all the clothes and the things myself. And I always, it was kind of tough, because when I would have opportunities to work with companies to make them more mainstream, because I had this like the company I collaborated with to do Christina Carlino, and even Sideshow, we were looking at making my fabric style dolls in characters of DC and the characters of Marvel or something. And it just didn't translate, because as soon as you convert that style of doll to a more mass plush to justify the cost and the numbers, you can't justify selling that doll for $100 because it looks like a plush. You know what I mean? So the special thing about my dolls is the fact that I've painted the faces. So I just kind of have to. I've been kind of realizing that, like, I felt like I wanted to succeed in this world. In order to have that success, I had to run away from that. I had to do these brands with these other companies, other places. And it's like, no, I just have to lean further into it. You know, that's the only way I know how to, like, kind of be an artist. So that took us to this phone call.
But I think you doing what it was that you did, it allows you now to take that time and refocus. Because if you didn't do that, you know, you would probably still be struggling, because the way your mind works, it's not going to work. You work the way that other people do it, and you wouldn't know that if you didn't have an opportunity to see how it works. You know what I mean? All different areas. You know.
Thank you.
To do that. Yeah.
Over the last couple months, I kind of realized that, you know, in making BJDs and stuff, I kind of realized that the beauty of my stuff still is about the painted faces. And you know, so this is kind of, like I showed you, one of my more traditional fabric dolls, and this is just made out of different fabric scraps. But I love BJDs, and I love posing them, and I love wigging them. So, and you know, it's not so easy to do with one of my big fabric dolls. So I just kind of, this is my basically kind of most recent type of doll, and she's 3D printed PLA, and but like I could make it in resin, but I ended up, over the last couple months, as I was working on lots of other projects, I put lots of little different fabric scraps on her, and stitched them all up, and she's basically kind of the closest to like a ball jointed version of my fabric dolls. And so I feel like she's kind of the real next evolution. But I love exploring new mediums, and 3D printing and sculpting is kind of like the most exciting, but I also want to make them attractive, because I think sometimes 3D printing is still a little crude. We're not there yet. But so this is kind of an example of like where I'm going with the art dolls. So this took me a couple of months. She took me a couple of months to make and put together. And I still haven't had the photo shoot, because I want to make a couch out of the same fabric for her to sit on. But you know, she's kind of
so I was going to ask you if you would see her legs and feet.
Yeah, she's kind of she's a rag doll, but not a rag doll, you know. So
that's really creative.
Her little hands. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then skeleton of the same, but you know, just painted on top of the pieces. And because, you know, if I were to go to the trouble of casting this doll in resin, I'd be like, that was an expensive doll. I don't want to paint all over it. You know, I don't want to, whatever. So I do love the way 3D printed plastic feels, but I don't like the way it looks. I want it to be smooth, and I want it to be pretty. And I don't know, I'm just exploring, just kind of playing and trying out different mediums. These were, there's an amazing sculptor, Cheyenne and Somtom, who sculpted this for me, and then I had it 3D printed. His name is Gothic Zombie on Instagram. He's someone whose aesthetic is really, really close to my own. So it's a fun. He's a good pairing. So I work with him a lot for sculpting.
So beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
The concept of that, and I love the ragdoll one. It's great. I love that.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
Fabric dolls are never gonna go away, and honestly, they are still. I made a collection of dolls based off of Katya. They're still the ones people kind of respond to and buy. But honestly, I think I just kind of got burnt out. I did get burnt out. I mean, I think as much as I loved doing the work in China, it felt the most like selling out than I had ever done before, because I wasn't super proud of the work. And I was having this and I was exhausted, like the way we were all kind of losing our minds right before COVID, having how much it was like just going I wasn't really building a life in LA because I was traveling so much, and then I would be doing these projects where I would have to be on calls at midnight, and I was on a very different schedule than the rest of the people in my life. I was living in my studio, so I kind of hit a wall, and I think I just need a little time to kind of to step back from it, and then to kind of come back to them in a healthy way. But now I'm like, I love them. They're not going anywhere. So now I want to figure out just a more holistic way to just continue to make and post and share. Yeah.
Yeah. I find this interesting in that in following you, I see how you are very like connected with doing the right thing for the earth. And so I've seen you talk about purchasing clothing and how do you purchase clothing, and you want to, because that reminds me of how you did this with the doll, because you're saying we need to be more sustainable in how we manage that. So I think that's important with the doll that you made, and with being a fabric doll. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I think sustainability is a big issue. It's facing us head on, and plastics and oil production is just, we're going to run out of oil. It's happening. I don't want to scare anyone. I get very apocalyptic sometimes, but I'm a realist. It could be 5 years, it could be 15, it could be 20. We don't know. And that's going to change the landscape of a lot of things and a lot of how we reorient our lives and a lot. So, I mean, with clothes, it started with clothes really because I came from this high fashion space and world, and then I was making a lot of money, so I was buying really nice designer clothes, and I could always kind of toot my own horn saying I knew where that come from, and I was doing work in India with a factory there, and they mostly do a clothing production, and they do a good job, but you see places that don't, and you see where these clothes come from and the world they come from, and you can't necessarily, it doesn't mean it's bad, because it's still giving this economy jobs, like if if Zara wasn't buying these clothes, then hundreds of factory workers would have no work. It does make an economy. So I'm not I don't mean that it's bad, but I think that we all have to be a little more conscious of like knowing where our stuff comes from. I think that the doll world is, at least the higher end, so leaving the Target toy aisle aside, the doll world reacts to the changes that are happening. I mean, Integrity is taking 2 years to deliver a doll, a year to deliver a doll after they post a picture of the prototype, and all of those are because of changing issues in the supply chain. Those kinds of dolls, I mean, that's partially, I mean, I don't speak for Tanner, but that is a lot of why things, like a lot of why he decided to close his business was because a lot of what was happening overseas was just becoming unmanageable. I mean, it ends up, when fuel gets more expensive, when fabrics get more expensive, when all this stuff gets more expensive. Also, the factory landscape in China's economy is taking off. So kids are not going to work in factories anymore. They're going to the big cities to get middle-class jobs. A lot of that industry is moving to other countries. So we could see, there could be a return to a less expensive collectible vinyl fashion doll. Like that could happen still, but the production in Southeast Asia isn't where it has been in China. So there's a lag, So, and so I mean, so these factories are empty. I mean, even in 2011 or 12, when I was doing this project with Lancome, I made keychains, like little fabric keychains that went in beauty boxes, and We made 30,000 of them, and I flew to China to do the quality control and look, and it would be in these huge factories that would be empty, and they'd literally have rows and rows of tables, and then 2 of the tables would be workers working on stuff. And they would say, it would be something like, oh yeah, this factory used to be for charms that were on the top of your cell phone, but then what happened to those? Everyone stopped doing that. So that factory, you know, kind of went away and did all that stuff. So that was just one trend in one place. And also a lot of those people, yeah, those factory jobs, they're leaving. So they're leaving. So retaining that kind of labor becomes more expensive. And then all of that goes back into the cost of the doll. And then you have doll companies and doll makers trying to keep the collectors happy, knowing they can't bust the prices up too bad. So they fudge you fudge your numbers as long as you can. And then all of a sudden your business isn't making any money and you have to make some tough calls. So, it's just so in that way, it's kind of like that end of the market has forced doll makers back into kind of the higher end. You know, I mean, with BJDs, one of the reasons BJDs is like taken off over the, you know, like these, like the BJD world has just grown steadily, and is because it's a shorter connection from doll to customer, you know, and like you can make your work and you can produce it, you can put it out there, you have more control, you can keep the quality control. But I mean, that's going to change as well. You know, I mean, the cost of materials is going to go up. The cost to import, export things is going to go up. And at the other side, you know, other technology will get better. You know, I mean, you can 3D print resin that looks pretty close to flawless. You know, I mean, there's still work to be done in like quality. I mean, it's a little more fragile, but Pat Henry called it out. She's the editor of GQ. She called it out years ago when 3D printing started to be a thing. She said, you know, someday we'll all be able to just 3D print dolls. And it's happening now, but it's just in a prototyping level, because they're still really crude and you still have to finish them and then you still have to get them cast and refined. But that bridge is pretty close. Like pretty soon, we're going to get to a point where you will be able to make and build a very complex, beautiful kind of doll on your desktop at home. And that's going to change a lot about how makers create, design, make collections and sell them to their customers. It will give you, having more control over the supply chain is greener by kind of default, no matter what scale you want to be at. The more control you have, the more you know where it's coming from, then you can make it greener. You can make sure that like it's not like you're not dealing with shady labor or this or that, you know. It's just tough though, because I mean, I just would love to make like a vinyl doll with rooted hair and like beautiful facial stencil screening and like beautiful, perfect outfits. And like, I would love to like make collections. I would love to do what Tonner did for years. I would love to be able to do that. And in another time, I could have worked and built my business to be that, but the world doesn't really allow for that kind of doll to happen. I mean, Joseph Sekeres, yeah, I mean, what he did to make the Glamour dolls, how much he had to pour his life into it, how much he had to pour his savings to go to live there. I mean, we were all seeing it. We all saw it on Facebook. We all saw him post this and share the process. And they are stunning and beautiful dolls, you know, and, you know, 10 years ago, that would have been a lot easier. It would have just been easier. There was more factories, there was more stuff. And now it's just kind of, you had to do what he did at that level. I don't know. I'm just trying to think like real outside the box in terms of like, you know, and I think we all have to. I think like I think as our artists are being asked to do that now. But and I had a moment, you know, I think that was like where a lot of like my unhappiness was when I was trying to break into the mass toy market. was because I had really strong beliefs and thoughts about climate change and this and that. And I said, I need to make work that aligns with my morals. You know, I need to like make work that I feel good about. And it just brings me back to art dolls, because that's the best way to do it. And I mean, I think there's a way you can be a conscious collector, you know. I mean, so, you know, like, it's not like, you know, even if you have a lot or you buy a lot, it all kind of has to be done consciously now, you know.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
So this has been amazing and wonderful. And I'm learning tons and tons about what's going on and what you're doing, and I'm excited to see what you're doing, and I'm excited to see these. It's like this convergence is happening. We see Joey Versailles, you know, and he had his little head dolls, and he had the little vinyl heads, and so we're seeing people coming along and saying, yeah, we need to be working this way. So it's really cool, and we'll have to have you back, because I could ask you a ton more questions.
I know, right? I can too.
I know, I'm good at talking too. So
you're great. I mean, it's been a great show.
Yeah, and listening to your story and how you got to where you got was really interesting, because I thought it was a totally different story. You know, it's interesting.
Yes, it was.
I love it.
So where should people reach out to you if they want to learn more about you or your dolls? Or
well, you can, my main website is astoryang.com, ASTORYANG.com. And then I'm on Instagram a lot, Yang-a-bang.
Yang-a-bang.
Yang-a-bang. It was like a high school name that stuck.
Oh, that's where it came from, Yang-a-bang. Where did Astor come from?
So Astor is, my real name being Andrew Yang, that wannabe presidential candidate, took over my Google search. I used to be the only Andrew Yang on the internet. You could type my name and all the dolls would show up. And then he came on the scene and totally did away with that. And so my great grandmother is an actress. She was Mary Astor, and I thought it was a cool way to kind of honor her, she's always been an inspiration, but also keep my initials, because my dolls tended to be abbreviated to AY dolls. You know? So I could kind of keep it all together. But I'm kind of thinking about Astor as kind of like a stage name or artist name, but the doll world still knows me as Andrew, so people can call me whatever they want.
Like Yatabaza and his different names.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love Thanos. Have you gotten him on yet? You have.
Yeah, we just.
Oh, good. I have to listen to it. He's so bad I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, he's really wonderful. Yeah.
He's a very, very wonderful guy. We were real buddies in New York for a long time when he lived there, and he witnessed a lot of the stuff we're talking about.
Nice, very
That's
nice.
cool.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. I think you'll like the interview. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have people reach out to you, and they can reach out to you at astoryang.com, ASTOR, and they can reach out to you on Instagram at Yang-a-bang. Sorry.
Yang-a-bang. Yeah.
YANGABANG.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Astor.
Thank you so much, Tammy, Georgette, G.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. Really, it's been fascinating.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share it. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Much love from In the Doll World.